You look like a happy guy there. The excitement of that the Democrats felt when Trump was raided by the FBI, what you're feeling now with the raid of John Bolton. Tell me why.
Well, I think it's, it helps us to put things in perspective, right? We saw these gleeful Democrats when Mar-a-Lago was raided, when Trump got his mug shot. These guys were they couldn't control themselves. And so they should not be surprised that we feel some of that same excitement now. In fact, I can't wait to see who the next guy who's going to be raided is. Now, on a more serious note, what it is that the Democrats began this game of using the power of the state against their political opponents. It started kind of under Obama when they mobilized the IRS, but it escalated under Biden where they began with Trump, it was not enough to have the 2 impeachments. It was not enough to try the Russia collusion. Those things were bad enough. But then they went with the 93 criminal charges. And so they should hardly, they're getting a little taste of their own medicine. I don't even think we need to provide any further explanation than that. It's like the Japanese hit us on Pearl Harbor. Guess what? They're going to be hit back one way or another.
Well, that's an interesting way to phrase that and frame that, Dinesh. But obviously, the Department of Justice doesn't want to say it that way. The FBI doesn't want to say it that way because then it just looks like what you just described. You hit us, we're hitting back. It's revenge. President Trump said this is not a revenge tour that he's on, but justice. This is about justice, not about hitting back somebody who hit me. John Bolton, according to the search warrant, apparently signed by a judge. This wasn't something where Trump just said, "Hey, cash. Send your guys to Bolton, let's get them." There had to be probable cause for this search and for everything, with all of the classified documents they're searching for here. He has to have something that is significant, right? Otherwise, there would not be a raid here signed off by a judge. This isn't just revenge, is my point. There's something serious going on.
Yes, I think we should distinguish the legal point here from the political point. And the legal point is that, we're not doing what the Democrats did in the sense that we're not trying to frame John Bolton. We're not trying to concoct some imaginary scheme. In that sense, we have to follow the letter of the law. We're not going to go after people who didn't break the law. But in a political sense, I think I would argue that revenge, or the other word that the left uses a lot is retribution. Trump is trying to extract retribution. And I would argue that retribution is, in fact, the essence of justice. I mean, just think about it. Every time you go to a horror film or a Western or a war film, a lot of the underlying moral logic of it is retribution. Something terrible is done to somebody, and then they extract retribution or revenge. Now, there are other theories of justice like, deterrence and so on. But the truth of it is deterrence has nothing to do with either the perpetrator or the victim. Deterrence is based on the bizarre idea that we should impose a penalty based upon, what the incentive would be for some third guy to commit the same kind of offense. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm coming somewhat to the moral defense of the idea of retribution. Retribution is tit for tat. And if you want someone to stop doing something bad to you, tit for tat is a pretty good way to go about doing that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But like I said, from the standpoint of politics, for the president's sake, for the party's sake in the midterm elections coming up, I don't know that, middle America, and I don't even know how many, moderate voters there are anymore, any centrist voters there are anymore, Dinesh, but, they want to believe that President Trump is doing everything he has to, everything he promised he would do, which led to his overwhelming victory, that he said would make the country better, not just to go back and do tit for tat with the Democrats. Do the Republicans need to say, look, we're not being like the Democrats, and we're not pushing phony impeachments and phony collusion hoaxes and so on and so forth. We're doing what's right by the American people, not just trying to get that retribution that you're talking about.
Well, I agree to the extent that I don't think that people vote on the basis of any of this. Now, they do vote on the basis of how Trump is projecting himself as a leader, whether he's seen to be competent on the world stage and domestically. They also look at gas prices and grocery prices. They look at what he's doing with tax reform and how their 401ks are doing in the market. So I agree with all that. But, I made a movie called Police State a couple of years ago, and one of the hardest things to convince people is when there is the weaponization of government going on, and when this was going on against Trump and against the right, many ordinary Americans, it's hard for them to believe it, because if they haven't heard a helicopter whirring on their front yard, no guys in uniforms came smashing through their front door, they weren't dragged down the staircase and out into the street where their neighbors could gawk at them and CNN was tipped off. In other words, if it didn't happen to them, it's a little hard for them to believe it happens in America at all. And I think that's going to cut both ways. So nobody really cares if Trump is doing this to the Democrats as long as he does other good stuff.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.